Here it is, the eve before the lockout. And it seemed like the owners and the players tried to get together. They tried to work out a deal, but the owners said, you know what? We're good. We're just going to wait this out. There's no rush for us to get anything done. Why rush? We could just wait till February. And you know who else says they can wait till February? Maybe Carlos Correa can wait for February too. And it seems like some teams are maybe worried about his back. You don't say. It's not like we've been worried about that for a while too. And we got a lot to talk about on this edition of the Locked On Astros podcast.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Astros, your daily Astros podcast. Here are your hosts, Eric the Man Huysman and Brett H-Town Wheelhouse Chancey.
We are Locked On Houston Astros, and we hope that you join us for a daily Locked On Astros podcast. My name is Eric Huysman. You can find me on Twitter at Eric Talks Stros. Find the show at Locked On Astros, your team every day. Brett, where can they find you at?
They can find me at H-Town Wheelhouse on Twitter and Instagram. They can find me at Stros411 on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Always positive, always Stros.
All right, we have a very special guest. I think you may have heard him on the radio once in a while, maybe. Sean Pendergast, where can they find you at?
Well, you can find me at Sean T. Pendergast on Twitter, and if you are early risers, you can find me at 6 a.m. on Sports Radio 610, Monday through Friday. Appreciate you guys having me on. You guys do a great job, so this is very, very cool for me. Thanks.
All righty, so I'm going to give you a break. We're not going to talk about that 2-9 team for on this show. So we're gonna take a break from that, and so we are going to talk about this. And guys, I do want to thank y'all for making the Locked On Astros podcast your first listen every day on your way to work. I know you want to listen to 610 and listen to Sean talk about the Texans all the time, but we do appreciate you listening to the Locked On Astros podcast and watching it on YouTube. Go and keep on subscribing, keep on liking us, and keep on good times rolling. So I know it seems like we keep on talking about Carlos Correa. You had Apollo Dez on yesterday, and you talk about Carlos Correa. Carlos Correa's name keeps on coming up. Everybody keeps on saying, why you keep on talking about him? Well, his name keeps on coming up. Yesterday, it came out that even though he's been negotiating with other teams, it seems like he's still in contact with the Astros. It seems like all the teams that potentially had interest in him, they're getting their shortstops, the Rangers, the Tigers, and he may have alienated the Yankees to a certain respect. And now it appears that, according to John Heyman, that Carlos Correa is willing to wait out this lockout that could be happening tonight and waiting for this. So, Sean, do you think that's a smart idea, the fact that he's waiting to see possibly if the luxury tax threshold goes up and he can get more money?
Yeah. I mean, I think, look, Carlos Correa is a good enough player. There's always going to be a market for Carlos Correa. I think whether there's the market that Corey Seager got, I don't think it's as automatic as people seem to think it was the other night. When Corey Seager signed his contract with the Rangers, all I could see was a bunch of different memes and things, people swimming in cash and things like that, and saying, no, this Carlos Correa spotted on his webcam, and it's, Scrooge McDuck falling into a big pile of cash. I don't know if it's that automatic. I don't know if it's the back injury rumors that would drive the market being slow. One of the things I wondered today on our show when we talked about it, though, I do wonder if, Texas gave that contract to Seager 10 years. Detroit was thought to be the front runner for Carlos, and now they've signed Javi Baez to a 6-year deal. I do wonder if Carlos has at least a little bit of regret for how aggressive he was going after the Dodgers and the Yankees back when he was defending the Astros, sort of defending the Astros' honor. He was very, very aggressive to the point of personal with Cody Bellinger. And I wonder if he regrets that at all, because if you look at the way the market's played out, guys, the game of musical chairs it's playing with shortstops, I don't know if the teams that are left that would be in for Carlos Correa, I think the only ones that would be in that 10-year deal strata would be the Dodgers and the Yankees. I don't know that any of these other teams that theoretically are on that odds board for Carlos, including the Astros. We know the Astros won't get close to that. But like the other teams are the Twins and the Cardinals and some of these other teams that that you see listed out there, Seattle. Like those don't strike me as 10-year, $320 million kind of teams. The Yankees and Dodgers obviously have the resources to do that. So that's my big question. If I were asking Carlos, I would say, do you regret at all kind of how aggressive you were? Because anytime those teams get brought up in think pieces about Carlos Correa, that's the first thing that gets brought up is how are the fans, how are the players in those clubhouses going to react to Carlos Correa signing? I think ultimately everything would get smoothed over, but it just comes down to what those teams think over the next several weeks about Carlos.
Yeah, and there's one team that I know has been mentioned in several circles and that a lot of people aren't really talking about or giving a lot of credence to. The team that I think has the most money with the best chance of signing him to a 10-year deal are the Phillies out in the East, and they have Bryant. They have Bryant on the radar, but Bryant, it seems like, is on everybody's radar. I believe John Heyman tweeted out like 10 teams that are in on Bryant, and I said basically John Heyman's reporting that the entire league wants Chris Bryant. I mean, it's obvious. the back issues. Now, I know he's had back injuries, but from what I understand, from what I know, there is a lot of smoke and mirrors that goes on during negotiation times. Sometimes teams or people leak stuff or get stuff out there to drive a market up or drive a market down. And if you don't believe there's market manipulators out there, then you don't have a pulse and don't follow sports. The bottom line is this: Carlos Correa may have to swallow his pride, take a massive 2-year deal with a 3rd-year opt-out with the Astros. I mean, but it would take around 40 to 45 million per year. Kind of like, remember Trevor Bauer's contract, how crazy that was? That's the insane type of contract that will take to keep him in Houston. I do not see Crane going over 5 years. Every indication tells me, and every person I talk to tells me, he has no inclination to go into a 10-year deal with Carlos Correa. He didn't even go into a 10-year deal with Altuve. And Altuve and Bregman were the biggest contracts that anybody's ever signed with the Astros. And so, in recent memory, actually under Crane. But at the end of the day, Crane is not cheap. Crane is a good owner. A lot of people give Crane a lot of crap, but this team has a window open till 2025 and beyond. And this is what I think might be hurting Carlos. He has an agency that has never, I don't think they've ever represented a sports person.
They haven't.
They are a Hollywood agency. And that might be a misstep. And sometimes, Sean, sometimes these athletes, they don't pick the best representation, but they trust them. And so now the ball is in his court.
Yeah. You know what too, Brett, is that I'm glad you brought that up, because the two shortstops that we're talking about in this free agency cycle on that layer of free agency are Carlos and Corey Seager. Corey Seager has Scott Boras. He's got the GOAT when it comes to doing stuff like this. So that Scott Boras was out there flipping over every stone, talking to every team, doing everything he could to get that 10-year deal for Corey Seager. Who the hell knows how Carlos's Hollywood agency was handling all this stuff? I can guarantee you, he was not handling it as well as Scott Boras was. I'm going to assume that Scott Boras, the guy who's been doing these big deals in baseball forever, who gets every last dollar he can for his guys and gets what they want, I'm going to assume that there's got to be part of Carlos that looked at Corey Seager's deal, part of Carlos. Maybe he's fine with how this is all unfolding. But there's got to be part of him that looks at what Corey Seager got and looks and sees, Scott Boras is his agent, and maybe question a little bit his decision for representation that he made, in the last couple of years, I guess it was, when he's kind of consulting with A-Rod on this whole thing.
So this is, I guess you would call this breaking news from Mark Berman. He says, according to MLB sources, the agent for free agent shortstop Carlos Correa has heard from the Yankees, the Red Sox, the Dodgers, the Cubs, and the Braves, and was offered 5 years, $160 million by the Astros last month. So those are the teams in on Carlos Correa.
Now the Cubs, I don't know how they would be in now. Now the Cubs just signed Stroman, to like a massive 3-year deal, huge deal for him, 25 a year. If you look at his FIP, I don't know. I think he's a little overvalued. The Braves is interesting. Don't they have Ozzy Albies? Would they move Albies to second?
Well, he
And
plays second base.
okay. Ozzy plays second.
Dansby
Yeah,
Swanson.
Swanson.
Yeah,
Okay, Swanson.
Dansby.
Yeah. Now
Yeah.
that's interesting. Dansby's had an up and down career. Dansby came through in the playoffs for them. That would be an interesting move. That would be a move that I didn't see coming. And the other teams, you said the Yankees and the Dodgers. I think the Dodgers are very much in play for Carlos Correa. I really do. I mean, think about who they've lost. They're losing Kershaw. He's not coming back. They've lost Seager. They got Chris Taylor back, who a lot of Astros fans were calling on the Astros to get. Larry the GM, Apollo Dez, myself, Eric. We've all said Chris Taylor would fit perfectly with this team. He goes back with a big 4-year, $60 million deal. The Mariners can still spend. I know they have J.P. Crawford, but why wouldn't you solidify the middle of your infield with a Crawford and Correa type of duo? I still think the Yankees, even though they've been mum, I still think they're out there. Now, they have a bigger problem on their hands with Judge and Stanton and Cole being on their payroll. So out west may be where we're looking, or the wild card, the Chicago Cubs.
You know what's interesting, guys, to me about these teams? I'm looking at Berman's tweet right now that you just read, Eric, and I wonder, the Braves, I don't know what their payroll was coming into, I don't know what their payroll was this year, but we know Freddie Freeman's a free agent. It makes me wonder with the Braves, do they have the wherewithal to give big deals to both Freeman and Correa? Is there interest in Correa at all, a statement on where they feel they stand with Freddie Freeman, who I think everybody thinks it's, a virtual lock that he's an Atlanta guy, he's the guy that signed there through all the bad times on that long-term deal. So I think everybody thinks he's going back there. But that would be, and look, they just won the World Series, so maybe they've got, bigger spending wherewithal than we think. But those would be two massive contracts if they brought those guys in. What do you guys think about the Red Sox for Correa? That's an interesting one with Bogart's contract up next year.
The Braves' current payroll as of right now is about $116 million. So they are way under the luxury tax threshold at the moment. That's not including Freddie Freeman or Carlos Correa or anybody. So they did what they did on. I know they had some people leave, but that was pretty impressive what they did in 2021, beating the Astros on that.
So what do you think about the Red Sox as he said, maybe moving Bogarts to second base?
Or moving – I guess they have Devers at third base, so they wouldn't move him to third base. So I don't know. I don't know if I would bet on that, Brett. What do you think?
Well, let me tell you, BetOnline has you covered on all the season props, odds, and lines more than ever before, as football season is here. And we know the Houston Texans are charging for not the playoffs. They're trying to get the number one pick, and they're failing at that. But that's okay. BetOnline remains the number one spot for all sports action this season. Head to our new updated desktop and mobile website to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use the promo code LOCKEDON to receive your bonus from basketball, football, NHL, boxing, and UFC right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts.
That would be interesting having him go to – who's their current second baseman? Current second baseman is – they don't really have one.
You mean for the Red Sox?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Enrique Hernandez.
Well, let me tell you. Kiki will play the outfield. Kiki will play the outfield. That'll be fine. They've got Bobby Dahlbeck at first. That would be one hell of an infield, guys. Devers, Correa, Bogarts, and Dahlbeck. Oh my gosh! All of a sudden the Red Sox are the Yankees. I mean that would be insane. That absolutely makes sense. Think about the Cora connection.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say. Like if we were saying the things we were saying about Hinch and Correa, a week ago, back when they were having their breakfast at Tiny Boxwoods over there, you could say the same thing about Cora also, right? I mean, there's the connection with the two of them. I think the Red Sox are an interesting one.
I mean, they're texting before the playoff series, so yeah. So that's definitely something I can totally see there. So, but Bogarts is a great shortstop in his own. But Carlos Correa won the platinum glove. So, I guess you would have to have him at shortstop. But I guess it would all depend on how healthy his back is. I mean, teams are, according to Buster Olney, a lot of teams are scared of his back, and according to him, Carlos Correa's agents have said, well, we're not going to let you see the medical reports until you give us a serious offer. And I don't know what.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
no, I I think that's more rumor than fact.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's being bantered about. I think that's because I heard the same thing and I've been looking into it. That's what's being said. That's being said, right? It's a he said, she said thing right now. But who knows? Maybe they did. I don't know. Like that to me seems like you're trying to hide something. If you do that, you're hiding something because if something's there, you're going to find it. I mean, if that's the case, you're just delaying the inevitable. So you sell the platinum glove, the gold glove, the clutch gene, the talking Valdez back on the mound, being the leader, having the team's back, putting the team on his shoulders. You talk about that. You don't talk about the injuries. You talk about his health. You talk about all that stuff, and you sell. You don't go, well, as long as you give us an offer, we'll show you the medicals. I think that's baloney, to be honest.
Okay. So, Sean, when all the smoke clears, maybe in February, when the lockout ends, or we'll talk about the lockout in a second, what do you think happens with Correa? What's your gut feeling?
My gut feeling is he still winds up going to the Yankees or the Dodgers, a team like that. I still think that there's going to be a big deal out there for Carlos Correa. The dust has kind of settled now with all the top tier free agents. He's really the only one still left out there in that strata. So him and Freeman. I think Stroman just went off the market. I don't have a list in front of me or anything like that. But it feels like all the names that were in that 20, 25, 30, in the case of Scherzer, $40 million a year range, have all flown off the shelves. So he's got kind of a captive audience here. I think ultimately somebody's going to give him the years that he wants. That's not the Astros. I do feel better about the Astros' chances now than I did a week ago. Like, I think Detroit getting married to Javi Baez is a big deal, and I think Seager going to the Rangers. I wish Simeon hadn't also signed there. I wish Simeon had taken one of the musical chairs somewhere else, and there's still Trevor Story out there to take up a spot. So I feel better about the Astros getting Correa. I just think at the end of the day, it's felt like such a fait accompli for such a long time that he's not going to be back here, that I'm just going to stick with that. I'm going to stick with that as my gut. But I know one of the other things Buster Olney's been saying is that among the most aggressive teams in the market pursuing shortstops are the Houston Astros. So maybe I know we say that Crane's not going to go over 5 years, but maybe I'm not saying he goes 10, but maybe they find a happy medium somewhere. Maybe 7 with an opt out after 3. I do think that there's a good chance that whatever Carlos ends up signing, he has some sort of, especially if it's with the Astros, that there's some sort of player opt out after the first couple 2-3 years to go test the market again. I think that seems like a logical thing to have in his deal. But I think a Yankee or a Dodger. I think that big 8, 9, 10-year deal is going to be out there for him somewhere.
All right, so let's go and move on from Correa. I'm sure not everybody doesn't want to hear Correa all day long. It's like listening, talking about the Texans. I mean, sorry, Sean. All right. So James Click, in his press conference with Hector Neris the other day, was asked about Correa, and he said, "We're not focused on that today. Today is about Hector. We're excited to have Hector. We'll address that at an appropriate time." And he also said that Hector was a guy that they pointed at early because he's able to get both righties and lefties. Last year in bullpen, you had guys that can only get righties out. Then you had guys that can only get lefties out. And teams were very smart with that because they're like, okay, well, let's stack them in this order. So I think that this is awesome. And the thing that I like is the fact that there's also a club a $8.5 million club option for 2024. And it has a $1 million buyout, and it could be a player option if Neris pitches 50 games in both 2022 and 2023 or he pitches 60 games in 2023, or gets 110 combined games in both 2022 and 2023. This sounds just like Odorizzi's contract. It's like very
It
complicated.
does.
You have to be a math teacher to be able to do it. But this was a under the radar total James Click type of move. It's not the Craig Kimbrell trade that everybody wanted, but they went out and got the players that they needed. So what do you think about James Click so far, Sean, as a GM?
I think so far so good. We were going through his moves during the playoffs, just kind of like sort of a report card of like the 8 or 9 most significant moves that he made. I think the only moves off the top of my head where I looked at and we gave a not a failing grade to, but certainly at the very least an incomplete, if not in that D, C- range. Obviously, the Odorizzi deal is not living up to what they were hoping for when they gave him $11 million a year, and then the Baez deal is sort of incomplete just because he didn't pitch it. He only pitched 4 innings or whatever it was this year. But I think he's done a nice job so far. I think his trade deadline pickups last year were obviously crucial to how far the Astros made it in the postseason, how close they came to winning a World Series. Maton and Graveman and Yimmy got things straightened out just in time for the playoffs. I like the Michael Brantley deal that he kind of fished Brantley out of the fire when it looked like he was going to Toronto. We'll see how the Brantley I know it's only a 2-year deal. We'll see how it ages in year 2 of it. Brantley, I know he hit 313 or whatever it was this year, but he was banged up quite a bit this year, and there's really no power numbers there. So we'll see how that goes. But I like it. I think he's the perfect combination. He's Tampa Bay background, all the little tricks of the trade that they use there to kind of to live in that low payroll world that they're in, and now he's doing it on a team where the owner is among the top 5 spenders in baseball. So I like what clicks. I like what he's done so far quite a bit, and I'll be anxious to see. The thing I'll be most anxious to see is once we get through this phase where the punishments, the draft capital punishments are behind us. Now James Click is going to get a chance to actually restock the minor league system. That's the part I'm most anxious to see moving forward. But in this small window here, I like how he's done so far.
No, yeah, definitely. And one of the things that people keep talking about is Justin Verlander and what's taken him so long to sign. They've got a deal in principle, but there's not been an official signing. There hasn't been a press conference. I honestly thought that when JV signed, maybe he signed and said, I want to make sure when I look to my right shoulder behind me that Carlos Correa is there. And I thought, surely we get JV, we'll get Correa. Well, maybe I wanted my cake and wanted to eat it too. And so one other person that I think is a very viable option is Trevor Story. And Trevor Story, I think because of the market, because of what's gone on, you could get him in on a shorter deal. You wouldn't have to give him a massive, super long deal, and it may be. And this is what I think the Astros are thinking. The reason why I don't think they're major players in elite shortstops outside of Correa is because they really believe in what they have coming up in the minor leagues. And if you really believe that Jeremy Pena is going to be your guy after an extra 200 at-bats or something down in Sugarland and bring him up and he's ready, then you look at an Andrelton Simmons. You look at somebody who is going to be a veteran, low cost, going to be effective with the glove. You don't have to depend on his bat. And then when Pena's ready, you bring him in, because I don't think you bring him in the first part of the year, especially because he does need more time at the plate because of the hand injury.
Yeah. I think the key to that, I like the Simmons idea. I mean, I don't like the idea of basically having 2 pitcher spots at the bottom of the lineup with him and Machete there. But so in turn, I think the key to that is getting Bregman from 2 years ago back. As long as if you got those 7 spots locked down with elite hitters, from 1 through 7, it makes it a little bit. And center field obviously is an issue as well. So I guess 6 is really what we're talking about. They'll need to figure out something with center field, and who knows? Maybe there's some deals out there. You hear these rumors about Baltimore might deal Mullins or whatever. Maybe James Click pulls a rabbit out of his hat with that. But so now, if you're talking, okay, center field, it's still this combo of Chaz and Jake Myers. You're going with a defensive guy at shortstop. You've got Maldonado. Now, over the course of that, you really got to have those first 6 guys hitting on all cylinders for most of the year. With Correa not there anymore, you got to have, we know who they are. I mean, obviously Altuve and Brantley and Bregman, and then the big bat, Yuli, and then the 2 young guys, Jordan and Tucker. It's really imperative for this team that Alex Bregman gets that MVP groove back this coming season. Correa doesn't come back.
All right. Something I don't know if you discussed yesterday, Brett, was Andre Scrub was outrighted to AAA, meaning he's off the 40-man roster. So that opens a spot on the 40-man roster. So I don't know if that was earmarked for Justin Verlander or somebody else, but that does open a spot on the 40-man roster. So they did tender contracts to all their arbitration-eligible players. Ledmez Diaz, Josh James, Phil Matan, Rafael Montero, Ryan Stanek, and Framber Valdez. So Scrub, he cleared waivers apparently, and so nobody wanted him, not even the Dodgers. So we'll see what happens. But I do want to talk about this baseball compared to this baseball. You think they're the same?
I don't know. Do you?
They feel the same, right? But apparently Major League Baseball used 2 different baseballs last year. And apparently for like the marquee games, they would use this baseball, which is the one that they'll hit a lot of home runs. This one would be the pitcher's ball, the one that would not hit a lot and maybe a lot of no-hitters, maybe.
That they allowed teams like Houston and Atlanta to play with, that they wouldn't allow big teams to play with. Look, here's the thing. Every time I hear someone talk to me or lecture me about the Houston Astros and how they ruin baseball, all I have to do is take a 2-minute stroll through the internet and find some stupid crap that this league pulls to try to snow the players and go, we are the bastions of all things moral and right. We didn't let Pete Rose in because we have a moral bone. No, you don't. You pick and choose your morality, MLB. And Rob Manfred, I'm talking to you. And I hope you hear this podcast, because using 2 different baseballs and not telling the teams, that's chicken. You know what? That's complete horse crap. And y'all want to clean up the integrity? Maybe we should if you use this baseball, a home run is worth 3 runs versus 1 run. Like, what is this turning into? RBI baseball 2021? It kills me. And it really pissed me off actually to hear this crap, because I've been hearing since I was in high school about the steroid era and how the steroid guys ruined baseball when they were being handed steroids like Tic Tacs in the minor leagues. And then when the politicians got on board, don't get me started, and they were grandstanding, then all of a sudden they had a moral bone to pick with everybody. And so, yeah, I think that's crap. I think they need to open the letter in New York. I think they need to come out. They need to admit that they screwed with baseball, and that's okay, because we know the truth, Manfred. We know the truth.
This would be like this, like in football with Deflategate, like they suspended the best player in the history of the game for 4 games because he lightly deflated a football that they thought that impacted his ability to, positively impacted his ability. This would be the equivalent of baseball literally like deflating one of the balls for some of the teams. You know what I mean? This would be like if football, if deflating is such a bad thing, but what we're going to do for these teams that play in the, for the teams that are all crappy and non-playoff teams, we're going to have them, when they go on offense, they're going to have to play with the ball that's fully inflated. With the good teams, we're going to allow them to go with deflated footballs. Like that's what this is. Like, that's crazy when you think about it. Like, not just that they got the supply of baseballs, but they were able to pick and choose. Like, they knew where they were sending. They knew who was using the specific types of baseballs. do you really have the two different kinds there, Eric? Or,
Oh,
like,
no,
are you really
they're both actual MLB baseballs, but one of them does feel a little bit lighter. So
I'll have to check. I've got a couple.
See?
I've got a ball. I've got two baseballs from World Series BP. Now, I don't know if those are the same baseballs. They weren't because they didn't have the World Series stamp. But that's interesting, man. I wonder. Maybe we need to take those baseballs, go out to the ballpark, Sportsplex, and hit
this
them.
one feels a little heavier
See
than
which one
this
goes
one.
further.
Yeah.
But since I've got the guns, you'll probably let me do the hitting. You do the pitching.
Yeah, I'll strike you out. Once my foot's better. But so moving on from that, I don't want to dwell too much on that, but that's just interesting. And they said that field a dream game. There's a lot of offense in that game, so you have to wonder which baseballs were used during primetime games, which baseballs were used. But the owners and the players did meet before the deadline today at 11:59 Eastern PM on the possible lockout, and apparently ended abruptly, and the owner's just like, yeah, we're good, we're not interested in communicating things. I mean, they're close on some stuff, but the players, they want the instead of 3 years before arbitration, they want 2 years. The owners, they want the extra year control, because we've seen what happens with George Springer, and just that extra year control is worth millions. And that's what we're talking about here. And then they are talking about expanding the luxury tax threshold. They want to raise it, but if they're going to raise it, then they're going to have sharp more penalties if you go over it. So I think they're talking about raising it to 214 initially, then eventually get into 220. And the Pittsburgh Pirates are like, why we have to spend more money? So
just to go off what you're saying, I'm wondering, like, so the players want that, they want to take away a year, and the teams want that year, because not only is it worth millions, but it's also worth more. It's worth more to the teams, because if I can trade a player with 2 years of control versus 1 year of control, that ups what I'm offering to another team. And I am hearing, and I can't place the exact wording, but something about, instead of 6 years until they're a free agent, like 8 to 9 years, or something, until they're like 28, like almost 30 years old. And they're just some absurd things.
Well, I saw it. I read it tonight. They want to keep it at 6 years, but the players, they want to do something where, and I don't know if this is what the owners offered or if this is what the players countered with, but this is what's on the table right now, is that it would be a normal 6 years, except if you have 5 years and you're 30 and a half years old, then you can hit free agency after 5 years. And then a few years down the road into this CBA, they'll lower that to 29 and a half if you've been active for 5 years. So basically, you'll get a year of service time towards free agency lopped off if you're an older player. Springer's the one that, if we were to play this game and pretend that was in place when Springer was here, Springer would have been a free agent like after 2019, probably, instead of 2020. He would have been an Astro for one fewer year, probably, than if we were under that. So it's not a drastic change, but it is crazy. Like, these guys that come in from college and they're not, like, they don't hit free agency till they're like 32 years old. It's wild. So I kind of get what they're doing there, but that's the part that you're thinking of, I think, Brett. The part where they're incorporating age into it. It's to try to allow players who are older and who come into the big leagues at an older age to hit free agency after fewer years, so that they're not over the hill by the time they're hitting free agency, theoretically. Yeah.
So this is definitely the first work stoppage in 26 years. So this is something that baseball has tried to avoid, but the owners just feel like they feel like this is important enough. The players just feel like they can't budge on this issue. And this is something that it's not just about Springer, but Springer is a guy that keep on bringing up because of what the Astros did to manipulate playing time. And the players know they can't really do anything about manipulating like when you call these guys up and everything, but they can try to do whatever they can do. But one thing that the players are willing to give in to is the expanded playoffs. And that's something that they want to maybe do that, but just do a different version of what the player. I know, Brett, you might have talked about that, but like having 14 teams and
It's
then
14. Yeah, it's like 14 teams. You have the leading team gets a bye into the division series, then the second place team gets to pick their opponent of the remaining 3 wild card teams. It kind of sounds like something me and my friends came up with in the mid to early 90s, of when we would create our own like baseball leagues or baseball teams. I mean, it just sounds like something out of a like I teach 7th graders. This is what my 7th graders would come up with. Now I get it from the owner's perspective. It allows for more money. They actually do allow player allowances. Players do get paid more because they get paid for each series. So the more playoffs, the more. But you now have this. I mean, it opens the market wide open. I mean, the players I think want 12 teams. The MLB wants 14 teams. And so I think that's something the owners would compromise on, more than likely give them. Also, I'm wondering about, are they going to talk about the shift? Is that in there? Are they going to ban it? Or is that just something after the fact? There are so many things that they have to come together on. And when you get big egos in the room on both sides, it comes down to who's willing to compromise or move their feet a little bit, because I think a lot of them have their feet firmly planted where they want them. They want the universal DH, the players do. The owners, I think they're okay with it. And so who knows, man, there are so many issues here. I just hope there's not a strike. I don't mind the work stoppage until spring training starts, but if there's a strike, it will do damage that will be felt through baseball for I
if
think
there's a
many years.
lockout, I don't think they can strike as long as there's a lockout in place, if I'm correct. So that's why the owners are locking out, so the players can't strike.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not a lawyer,
Yeah.
but I believe that's what the rules are.
And maybe you're right, because I mean, heck, this hasn't happened since 1994, so I'm not up on all that. Yeah.
Yeah, but a lockout, from a fan's perspective, a lockout is the same thing if games
Right.
start rolling around. You know, like the fans don't care who's initiating.
Right.
Like when football almost had theirs, or I think the NBA also, when the NBA had their shortened season a decade ago, I think that was a lockout, not a strike. So from a fan's perspective, it's 6 of one, half a dozen of another. I like the idea of drafting your opponent in the playoffs. I would love it if all sports did that. I think it would be fun. I think the made-for-TV aspect of it, I think the draft itself to pick your opponents would be must-watch. I think the analysis that would go into who that first team would take. Look, if they use that method, we talked about this today, we went through it. If they use that method to decide the playoffs this past postseason, the Astros would have had the first pick in the AL playoff draft, because it would have been Tampa Bay getting the 1 seed, so they've got the bye, and then 2, 3, and 4 are picking from the rest of the teams. And so the way we played it out, we kind of played it out, and so the Astros would have had their pick of Yankees, the Blue Jays, and the Mariners for their first round opponent, and they would have hosted a 3-game series at Minute Maid Park. Now, it's a little harrowing having to play a wild card series. Like if you're one of those 5, 6, 7 teams at the bottom there, you love that because it's just so random. You know, like winning 2 games. It's a baseball. Winning 2 baseball games. Like anybody can beat anybody in a best of 3. But the concept of it, I really like. It's got the potential for all kinds of things for the teams that are picked first. It's a lot of analysis of, who's the best matchup for that team, as opposed to just slotting them what their records are. I think it would be a lot of fun.
It's almost. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say before we need an end pretty soon, but I do want to mention that Sarah Goodrum is she was the first woman in Major League history to hold the role of minor league hitting coordinator for the Brewers. She's now joining the Houston Astros as director of player development,
Wow.
and so this is something that the Astros have talked about, and I think Mark Berman actually. Announced and said that this is something that the Astros have. I'm trying to find actual quote, but this is what Nita Segal said. She said, "We are working through the pre-employment process. Her start date is to be determined at this point, and she'll be the Astros director of player development. So welcome, Miss Goodrum. And she said that for me, it's always been about showing first and foremost that I care about them. I'm gonna always continue to do that, going into the role of being more in front of face of our players, showing them I want to help your guys in your career and always be able to provide that information. Our hitting coaches are phenomenal, and I think that players mind what your gender is. It's all about the information. I think that's when she was the hitting coach with the Brewers, but that just shows that the Astros are just looking to just maybe change their reputation based on some past instances. But
Well,
welcome to the thing. So, Sean.
and see, I've had this conversation with those that listen to our show, and understanding Jim Crane is he hires the right people
Right.
for the job. He is a very smart businessman, and I promise you, before they hired her, he said, if we get a new player development person, I want them to be the best. I want them to be up and coming, not just, oh, we hired the first female.
No,
It's
I don't.
like, right, but I'm just saying she is heavily qualified. She played on the national level in college.
Softball, yeah.
Yeah, softball. She was a phenomenal player all through high school into college, and just has a great resume. She has a great demeanor with the players. I'm hoping that with all the Sugarland games that we get to go to, that hopefully she'll be there. We'll maybe get to meet her in person, talk to her, and just get to pick her brain, because this is big news for the Houston Astros, because this team is not only stacked in the major league roster, but in the minor leagues. We've got some studs that are coming up, and we've got Cuban players, international players that she'll get to work with that are second to none.
Yeah.
Yeah, Brett hit the nail on the head with everything there. I think it's awesome. I think it's cool. I think it's a great opportunity, and I think kind of what you were touching on there, Eric. This is an Astros team that's had a lot of PR black eyes over the last 2 or 3 years. Not the least of which was the Brandon Taubman incident in the clubhouse. So for this, and I'm sure that's not why she was hired,
Right, yeah.
but I think there's enough people that don't live in Houston that still, I think, look at the Astros from 30,000 feet and they remember those incidents. This should be something that I would imagine, if you're still one of those people outside of Houston looking at the Astros that way, that this is a move that hopefully turns the volume down for you a little bit.
All right. So I've got to ask you this question, Sean, before we let you go. Do Texans win another game this year?
They better. And this call into question my sobriety, but I actually placed a bet on them before the season to go over 4 wins.
Wow.
I was, just really optimistic. So over 4 wins. I know, over 4 wins in a 17-game season. So I bet on the over. They're at 2 right now. I do think, boy, they lost to the Jets last week. Do they win another game this year?
That was their game. Yeah, they're
going to win one more game this year. I know. That, what's crazy? Like a month and a half ago, they should have beat the Patriots, and now the Patriots are like 3rd in the power rankings or something. Like it's crazy. Football's been wild this year, man. Like, not to go into
I'm going to call it. I'm going to call it. They're going to beat Seattle. I'm a big Russell Wilson fan. They're going to beat Seattle. Seattle is down. Seattle's playing terrible. They're going to beat Seattle, and that'll be one of their wins. You only got one more, Sean. Actually, 2 more, I guess.
Well, and then they have Jacksonville. They have Jacksonville the following week, and they've beaten And Jacksonville's really terrible too, and they've beaten the Jags already. So I'm holding out hope that I can get to the magical 4-win count for the year. that Seattle one's a good one because that's, it's one thing when I think Seattle's 3-8 now. It's one thing when you're 2-9 and you expect it to be 2-9. Like, I think the Texans, they just suck, but they play hard. I think they're going to play hard the rest of the year. They knew the deal coming into the season. Teams like Seattle, Russell Wilson has never won fewer than 10 games probably in a season. Now he's on a team that's 3-8. That's a team that looks like they've kind of cashed in. Pete Carroll's like walking out of press conferences because he doesn't know how to answer questions. He literally said that. He's like, I don't know, guys. Like, I haven't been on a losing team since, like, before USC. He literally just walked out of the press conference, and then somebody had to grab him and say, Coach, you're contractually obligated to go at least 5 minutes. You got to go back in and give him 2 more minutes. So, I like that, Brett. Seattle's a good one. So, yes, Eric, to answer your question, sadly, that's not even a tongue-in-cheek question. It's a serious question. Do they win another game this year? I'm going to say yes.
Yeah, I was totally serious with that. But all right, Sean. Once again, Sean, where can they find you on Twitter, and where can they listen to you on the radio?
Yeah, at Sean T. Pendergast on Twitter, and I'm on Instagram also. You can just search my name on there, and I'm on Facebook. But the radio show is the big thing. 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. Sports Radio 610 Monday through Friday. Payne and Pendergast, and I know, contrary to popular belief, we don't do Texans every single segment. In fact, the worse they've gotten, the more I'll show. If I could, I'd pull my rundown up for tomorrow on here. I got all kinds of baseball stuff in there because of the lockout and Correa. We've talked a lot of Astros on there, certainly through the playoff run and whatnot. But 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. Monday through Friday, and we have a good time on there. Seth Payne is original Texan and a lot of fun. So I appreciate you guys having me on.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, guys. So thank you once again for making a Locked On Astros podcast your first listen every day. Then you could go listen to Sean and Seth afterwards, and you can go and subscribe to us on YouTube. Give us a like, and we'll be back. I think we have a player interview tomorrow, unless there's breaking news or some type of breaking news or something. And we'll be back next week with some more Locked On Astros podcast, and go Stros, and get ready for the dead time with a lot of lockout and nothing going on. So we'll be here every day and talking.
We will have plenty of content. Yeah. So stay with us.
Yes, definitely, for sure. So we'll be back, and go Stros.